Hi everyone, welcome to Camp in a Box. Today we're going to explore some ancient history and make our very own Ancient Egyptian Cartouche. For this you're going to need some salt dough and a template for your cartouche, as well as a writing utensil and a pair of scissors. Go ahead and cut out your template and set it aside. Then you're going to want to flatten your dough and pinch off a small section for you to use for later sculpting. Next, you're going to roll your remaining dough into a ball and then flour your work surface. This is a messy craft, so make sure you have a tablecloth down or you're working someplace that can easily be cleaned. I decided to use this tube as a makeshift rolling pin and went ahead and made sure it was well floured as well. This will help me make sure that my dough is rolled out on a nice smooth plane and it's all about the same thickness. You don't have to use a rolling pin though, you can just as easily use your hands. The surface of your cartouche might be a little lumpy, but hey, that just adds to a character and makes it one of a kind. Remember, this is an easy craft to fix your mistakes if you accidentally make them. It looks like I rolled my dough out a little bit too thin, so I just folded the edges back together, smushed it up into a ball, and started rolling out my shape again. You're going to want to try to roll your shape out to about ½ an inch thick. If you don't have enough dough to fit the full template of the cartouche shape, that's okay. Just use a pencil and trace out as best you can the shape of the template. Once you're happy with your shape, play around with some different tools to remove the extra clay from around the shape's perimeter. I started with a pencil but ended up using this wooden craft stick because I could poke holes along the lines that I had drawn in the clay and then just easily tear the clay away from my main shape. After working with salt dough a couple of times now, I've realized that it's best to use this material if you're in an air-conditioned area. My makeshift studio at the office is out in one of our garages, so it's really humid and the dough gets really sticky really quickly. So, if possible, do this craft inside. Go back and refine the edges of your shape with a wet finger. This will help smooth out all the edges so that it dries in a more uniform shape when you leave it overnight. Now it's time to build up the shape of our cartouche. Use some of your extra clay to form a trapezoid for the base of your cartouche. Once you're happy with how the shape lines up, set it aside and get your finger wet again. This will help stick your new shape to your original cartouche, and the two dough pieces will adhere together. Next, you're going to want to form a coil for the frame of your cartouche. Take all of your extra clay, wad it up into a ball, and start rolling out your coil on a well-floured work surface. You're going to want to make sure it's nice and long, so you don't have as many breaks in the coil on your actual cartouche. You don't want a jagged frame. But if you can only get it into about 2 or 3 pieces, that's completely fine too. Wet your fingers and then run them along the edge of the cartouche that you plan on sticking the coil to. Then grab your segment of coil and gently press it along the edge that you just got wet. This will help the dough become sticky again and make sure that the coil sticks to the bottom part of the cartouche, just like we did with the base section earlier. If you have a section of the coil that looks a little thin, you can always use a little bit of extra dough to bulk it up. Just roll it into a small coil and press it up against the original coil. Once you're happy with how the coils look and how they're attached, go ahead and use a tool to smooth out the edges. Make your corners sharp and try to round out your oval areas. Now it's time to add our rope decoration. The rope is supposed to hold together the base of the cartouche and the frame. You're going to want to sculpt a rough rectangle shape, whether that's in your hand or on the table, and then you're going to press it on the base of your cartouche so that it overlaps both the base part and the frame. Use your fingers to smooth down the dough along the transition areas. Now it's time to turn our little rectangle into a section of rope. You're going to want to grab a sculpting tool. I used a wooden craft stick and make several parallel lines along the rectangle. You're going to want to make sure that these lines are pretty deep, but not deep enough that they imprint onto the base of your cartouche. That's why we built up the area with extra dough. Because my dough is still pretty sticky after being left outside for a little bit, I went ahead and floured the surface of my cartouche and smoothed it out. This is a completely optional step though. If you're in a cooler, air-conditioned room, you shouldn't have to do this. Now it's time to bake your cartouche. Let it dry up a little bit and then bake it in the oven. The instructions can be found in the description box below. While your cartouche is in the oven, it's time to start writing out our name in hieroglyphs on our template. Go ahead and grab your key and start finding the letters of your name. My name's really easy, it's just E-R-I-C-A. One thing that's really important to remember when you're writing in hieroglyphs is that everything is phonetic. So if you have a name like Michael, you're actually going to want to only spell it as M-I-K-L, the sounds of your name. Or for example, Sophie. Instead of doing the P-H in your name, you just replace that with an F, so it's S-O-F-I. Once you've figured out which letters of your name you're going to use, it's time to start drawing them on your template. Now, cartouches are traditionally read from the top down. So start with the first letter of your name towards the top and then work your way down the cartouche. It doesn't necessarily have to be read from left to right, but you do want to start at the top and work your way down. Once you're done drawing, go ahead and grab a pen or a marker and go over all of your drawings so that they're very dark and will pop against the markers that we'll use to color later. Now it's time to color. This step isn't entirely necessary, but it's helpful if you're not sure what colors you want to use on your final cartouche that's probably still baking in the oven. And there we go! Now you have an idea of what to do with your cartouche when it gets out of the oven. Make sure you give it plenty of time to cool down, so leave it alone for a couple of hours or even overnight. Then you can grab a pencil and paints and paint your own cartouche that you made earlier.